Welcome everyone, this is AllMinucOne Quick Shots. So today we've got some breaking news that I think is just silly breaking news. And that is the Chinese Spygate that is coming out. This is like, maybe if you're a normie, maybe if you don't pay attention, maybe if you have no clue what's been going on in the United States for the last 50 years, this is breaking news. But if you understand basically the trend that the Republicans and the Democrats kind of in the center, or would believe you to be in the center, the rhinos and the dinos, those neocons and neolibs, those people who are truly in power in our federal government, they've been doing this forever. We know there are documents, I've covered this before, going back where the Chinese government has helped the DNC, has given money to them. We know that Nixon, which I'm going to talk about here, opened up relations with China. We know that the Chinese had far more spying and internet interference, like 1,000 times more than, several thousand times more, I've covered this before on other segments, than Russia. And I just don't know what the big deal is with this story because it's a big nothing burger, in my opinion. It's business as usual. In Beijing, Biden is business as usual. So Tucker Carlson last night had a little segment, and then today we get this article from Axios, and I'm going to go over here. It's just a rehash of the article, more or less, from the Daily Mail out in the UK, and how Feng, the Chinese spies, slept with two U.S. mayors and targeted politicians, to include one of the youngest members of the House, before slipping out of the U.S. when the FBI came knocking. Okay, well, yeah, go check this out. People are covering it. Tim Pool's talking about it. It was his main segment that just got released here. Whatever. Literally. Like, this is old business, folks. Go look into the UN and their scandals with China. Look at the World Health Organization and how they protected China with this whole big coup. Look at the idea of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. What is this about? I can tell you what it's about. It is about creating a one world communistic, fascistic type government. And China's the model, folks. When it says the U.S. will no longer be the world superpower, I always say I'm fine with that. I don't want to be the world police. But China is going to be the superpower. It's not going to be Russia. Russia, their GDP is less than that of Texas, less than New York, California. They don't have it. Now, they have a lot of natural resources. They have an economy they're trying to rebuild since the fall of the Soviet Union. But they're just not in a position of power like they would like to be. You have to realize as well that the Soviet government, the military, broke up drastically, and military arms were sold all over the place after the fall of the Union. And in fact, many entrepreneurs were out there selling Russian military training. I partook in much of that personally. I studied Russian martial arts for some odd years, since 2005. I'm not so active about it or in it anymore. But you had guys that were former Spetsnaz, KGB guys coming over to the West, training Westerners and some of their martial arts concepts. Most notably, some folks up in Canada. And, of course, you had General Rutensky, which Scott Sonnen of the Ross fame, who no longer is with the Ross system, but basically stole all of that stuff as an American and rebranded it as his own and copyrighted a bunch of stuff. But that is another story, folks. That's another story. That's inside baseball stuff. And you probably don't care about. Let's get back to this whole China Gate scenario. So this is from History Today. It's just a brief overview. It's an article from 2 years ago. It says, Richard Nixon opening to China and closing the gold window. President Trump's recent foreign adventures are unlikely to match Nixon's actions of July and August of 1971 in historic significance. And this is sort of a hit piece against Trump and how Biden did a good thing by opening up China in 1971. The interesting thing with this is he immediately stopped the gold standard right afterwards. He says Nixon was back on television to announce a bombshell decision to unilaterally close the gold window, the linchpin of the post-war international monetary system established at Bretton Woods Conference in 1944. Now, Bretton Woods was not a great deal, but it did stem inflation quite a bit. If you might recall, I did a video the other day that 23% of all money ever printed in the United States, created, digitally or printed or whatever, was just done in the last year. 23%. That's insane. Hyperinflation will be coming, folks, unless that money is pulled out of circulation and able to be spent properly. And it's going to be a bad time for us in the United States. And then, between lockdowns, the transfer of wealth to all these giant businesses that are going on, your political elites being the jerks that they are and self-interested, and the collapse of small business, we're going to hit some sort of Great Depression, and you are going to beg for the Great Reset. That's what's going to happen, because people are stupid and easily influenced. So let's look at this timeline real quick. This is justhistory.com, and this is a Vietnam War timeline. So President Johnson halts bombing of Vietnam at the 20th parallel. Nixon wins the election and promises to restore law and order and end the draft. Of course, he didn't quite end the draft. He just created a draft with a lottery that was still a draft. So we have Hamburger Hill. By the way, all this is after the Tet Offensive. Ho Chi Minh dies. U.S. government institutes first draft lottery since the Second World War. Okay, so it talks about the administration from 69 to 72 gradually reduced forces in Vietnam. Well, interestingly, we were fighting in Vietnam and we decided to bomb Vietnam quite a bit. But Vietnam was being backed by the Chinese communists and Mao, right? Like that's where they got their supplies and stuff from. It wasn't like out of thin air, and it wasn't necessarily Russia. I find this interesting. UN Secretary Advisor Henry Kissinger begins secret peace negotiations with Hanoi. Okay, that's a good thing, because I don't like war or men and women having to go to war, especially other people's wars. But Henry Kissinger was a globalist, and so was Nixon. And then it talks about a series of secret bombings and whatever else. South Vietnam forces attack communists across the border in Cambodia, yada, yada, yada. Continues. Then Kent State shooting. Very, very destabilized time, much like we're going through right now. But as we go through this, you're going to see that the end of the Vietnam War launches more air offense. President Johnson had died. Selective Service announces the end of the draft and institutes all-volunteer military. This is in 73. And then the Paris Peace Accords finally happen. Well, they opened up China way before that. And then the Bretton Woods, the ending of Bretton Woods was way before that. So were we really fighting with China is the question. The question I want you to ask yourself. By the way, you can look up how the Bretton Woods system worked. None of this is constitutional, by the way, folks. But it was basically an agreement that we were the world monetary supply. We were the new world order. We led the new world order. And that's why the UN was placed in New York City and not elsewhere. Because we had the might, which made the right. And then we decided to open up China. Part of that also, I think, was some issues with Japan and their manufacturing, because they were starting to supply us with a lot of manufacturing. If you recall, all the manufacturing, if you lived through the 80s, I was quite young, but I was there, was produced by Japan, and Japan went through a period of hyperinflation, which destroyed their manufacturing. Of course, they manufacture now, but not things that people necessarily find useful. And China was allowed to take over all the manufacturing. Before that, the United States was one of the largest manufacturers in the world. And I'm not saying the manufacturing doesn't exist in the United States, but look, we're not self-sustainable. These people have been selling us out for decades. Beijing Biden is no different. If you're a patriot, you want to slow this stuff down. If you really want to live a better economic life, you really better pray that the Supreme Court or the legislature, state legislatures or Congress on January 6th decide that this election was not fair. Now, if you want to look more into this on your own, it's going to be all over the news. It's kind of a big story. Unlike the Hunter Biden thing, I don't think it will be as suppressed. If the Daily Mail is talking about it, they may have talked about Hunter Biden, but I could be wrong because the corporate media news outlets are, a propaganda wing of the DNC or the deep state, and all of that likes China. One of the biggest reasons why, say, someone like George Soros was openly stating in the World Economic Forum that he didn't like Trump, is because he wasn't for this globalist stuff. And maybe you think globalism's a good idea. You are a absolute fool. But, whatever. I'm fond of calling people fools who have their eyes closed, their head up their butt, or in the sand, or wherever else it might be. Maybe it's in your phone and stupid social media. Who knows? But I do know that this is not sustainable, folks. It is going to be heartbreaking. It will be blamed on capitalism because people don't know what capitalism is. The propaganda will continue, and you need to stand up and fight if you know better. You need to stop being silent around your family and friends. I have an interesting little passage from the Bible where Jesus said that he came to this earth with a sword. Now, many people will interpret that to war. That's completely antithetical to anything and everything else he said, and all the teachings of the apostles, and then all of the teachings of the first 3 centuries of the Christian fathers. That is, the early Christians that were the heads of the church, and or that wrote extensively about the church. What that passage meant specifically was to divide, because if you read it in context, he says that I will put father against son, mother against daughter, brother against brother. And he's not talking about in war. He's talking about in spiritual war, that people will be divided over such issues. And that's really what we are in, the old Ephesians 6 passage, that this is not a war of flesh, but of principles and principalities, of spirits and things of the air. This is a war in the 21st century of information, largely. And the internet is censoring things because they like that sweet, sweet, sweet Chinese money. That billion people. And I'm not saying that all of them are sitting in a room going, yeah, twirling their mustaches and coming up with all their plans. But I'm saying that, yeah, to a little bit they are. But they think it's good for you. They think that it's cool that you get to suffer, because in the end, humankind won't suffer and the environment won't suffer, because we'll reduce the entire world's population and it'll be easy to control, and you just aren't smart enough to make decisions for yourself. To that, my friends, I say no. But I don't know. Maybe you think the same. In any case, folks, with all that, this has been AllMinucOne Quick Shots, and I wish you all well.